Continuing announcements. Anybody here for the first time at Celebrate Recovery tonight? All right, welcome here. I'm glad you're here. Afterwards, we have an insightful arrangement. I'm trying to come up with new words for this. It's not a class.
It's an orientation.
Nah, it's not even orientation. It's better than that. Huh? Okay, it's 101. Sounds like a class to me, but it's not that boring. It's informative and it's helpful, and it lets you know what Celebrate Recovery is and what it's not. And so, if you're like me, it's like, oh, I'm going to find a way I don't want to come back. I want to find a way to check out that I don't belong. And so, just stepping into that and taking a risk and finding out some information about it is going to be helpful. God's going to honor you for that. He's going to bless you for it. All right, so what else? We got a smoking policy. If you're going to smoke, please do so around the corner behind the gymnasium, the cafeteria, back in that corner there, okay? And there's a cigarette tray back there. I guess you call it a tray. I don't know. It's a receptacle for cigarette butts. And then this Friday, Beyond Recovery is going to go beyond this Friday to next Friday. It's canceled this week, and it will be continuing next Friday. Do we know what's going to be the topic yet next Friday? We'll decide that. We'll let you know next Wednesday, okay? All right. About Beyond Recovery?
No, but if you would like any other salad dressing to decide I counted, I would suggest possibly donating some salad dressing without I counted.
We need salad dressing. Beyond Recovery, we need salad dressing. We need some salad dressing. Anybody got salad dressing? Next week we get some salad dressing. All right, thanks, Casey. We want to feed people well. We want a variety of salad dressings. You get the message? Okay. All right, so, straight from Bronson, Michigan. Does everyone know where Bronson is? It's down that way. Turn left at the Big Rock. It's out by Sturgis. There's a Celebrate Recovery. On what night is it? Tuesday nights at what church? Church of Christ in Bronson. At what time? 6 o'clock. You're looking for adventure in the woods, out in the country? Go to Bronson on Tuesday nights. Oh, cornfields. You like corn? All right. It's a pretty drive. I've been there. And it's a beautiful little Celebrate Recovery. And we're going to welcome Erica. Come on up. Warm welcome for Erica. She's got a life testimony she's going to share with us from the heart. You need this one?
All right, you guys have been a great crowd so far. I love this. So my name is Erica. I am a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. On the poster for Celebrate Recovery, there are 24 habits and hang-ups listed. If I'm being completely honest, I've struggled with all 24 of those issues at one point in time or another, so I'm not going to list them all. What I will do instead is tell you about the 3 I struggle with the most right now, and the 3 I feel I have the most victory over right now. So let me start over. Hello, my name is Erica, and today I am struggling with feelings of abandonment, the need to people please, and perfectionism. Today, God has given me victory over the shame from my past, crippling depression, and spousal abuse. By the way, I am a crier, so I guarantee I will cry at some point, so thank you for the tissues. As I started to write this, I wasn't too sure where I wanted to start. I went back and forth a few times. Do I start with my conception, which was the result of an affair? Do I start with my parents' divorce when I was 6? Do I start with the trauma I dealt with as a preteen and early teenager? I couldn't decide. So here's what I decided. My testimony isn't my story, it's God's. So where did God start writing my story? Well, he tells us in Psalm 139:13, "For you formed my inward parts, you wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. My life has been full of trials, but also full of miracles. Some I didn't even realize until the night I finished writing this testimony. I wrote this in January, by the way, or finished it in January. So I had been cleaning and organizing my office, and in doing so, found letters each of my parents wrote to me on my graduation day. Reading those letters brought back a lot of hurt from the past, but a lot of love also. Those letters are miracle number 1. We will get to the reason why at the end. One of the letters was from my mom. If none of you know my mom, but if you did know my mom, you would know that she loves to write. So I won't read the whole letter, but I want to share a few parts of it. May 25th, 2010, she writes, "When I remember the second I found out I was pregnant with you, I feel the happiness swell in my heart again. Of course, I had to temper my expression given the circumstances, but I was going to have a baby. I was going to be a mom. My heart was bursting with joy. God was bringing beauty out of the ashes of my mistake, and my whole heart was filled with love for you." Later she writes, "One day the phone rang and the nurse told me I needed to come back to have another ultrasound. The second confirmed what the first had seen. I didn't know what water on the brain meant, but as I started researching, I understood why the doctor and nurses were so somber. Mental handicap, physical handicap, death. I cried out to God for a miracle. The next ultrasound took forever as the technician looked and looked and looked and found only a healthy baby. I wept in relief and gratitude. The doctor concluded that there must have been a spot on the first film. And the second? On separate days? No. God heard the cries of a mother who couldn't think of a life without her child." Told you. I use humor to deflect, just so you know. "You, sweet daughter, are God's gift of mercy to me." Miracle number 2. My childhood was pretty average by today's standards. My sister and I were raised in 2 separate homes. One week we would stay with my mom, and the next week we would stay with my dad. That was what we knew from about 1998 until around 2008, about 10 years of our life. There are a lot of things in that 10-year period that I can't remember correctly, or I remember them out of order, so I don't want to add them here. Instead, I'm again going to let the letters from my parents do the talking for me. My stepmom in her letter to me wrote, "You have a determination that isn't taught. It's a strong aspect of you. It is what has gotten you this far through life and all of your many trials. You have had to deal with things no child should have to. You have dealt with them and come out the other side stronger and wiser, and you have still managed to care and love for others." Miracle number 3. When I was a junior in high school, I had my first boyfriend. I had a pretty good group of friends at school. I got my driver's license. I had a new horse. I grew up on a farm. Horses were my life back then. Life seemed pretty great, but little did I know my life was about to turn completely upside down.
You can do it.
Thank you.
You can do it.
Remember how I told you there were a lot of things I couldn't remember or I remembered out of order? What I'm about to tell you is one of those things, but it is a vital piece of my story, so I have to share my story as I remember it. At some point when I was in high school, my mom ended up losing custody of me and my sister. I'm not sure why or when, and neither of those are important. But what I do remember is that part of my life felt scary, but I can't exactly recall why I felt that way. My mom ended up getting us every other weekend. During that time, she thought that my dad was using our cell phones to spy on her and the things that were said at her house. When we arrived at her house, we'd have to take our batteries out of our phones and put them in a drawer until the end of the weekend. One weekend, again, I can't remember what we were fighting about, but my mom was mad that my dad had gotten custody of me and my sister. And she yelled out to me, "You're not even your dad's." At the time, I thought it was strange, but I just shrugged it off. When I went back to my dad's that Sunday, I said to him, "Mom said I'm not even yours. What does that mean?" He said, "She's just being crazy." And we moved on like nothing had ever happened. Looking back now, even though I can't remember all of the events of my life, I realize that my life must have been pretty chaotic for me to shrug something as big as that off without much of a second thought to it. Sometime later, I'm not sure how long it was past that, my mom on one of her weekends sat me down on a Friday evening to tell me that my dad really wasn't my dad, showed me pictures of the person who was my biological dad, and told me that she just can't live a lie anymore. Remember, I had no way to communicate with anyone during that time. When I went back to my dad's house, I remember him taking me to a park, and we just talked about everything. He told me that the day I was born,
Breathe.
my mom had asked him to be with her at the hospital. And when he saw me, he knew I'd be his. Miracle number 4. I have a picture of when I was about a month old that shows just how much my dad really did love me. We had a special bond. Anytime we'd have something in common after that point, or a similar way of doing something, we would call them my acquired genes. Back to the letters. This one is from my dad. Let me make you this promise. Sorry. I will always be here for you. There is nothing that can change my love for you as a daughter. You are my daughter, and no one can take that special relationship from us. Okay, I'm done talking about my dad for a second, so I should stop crying for a minute. Sorry. As a junior in high school, finding out that my dad wasn't really my dad set me off on a trajectory of life that would lead to several years of destructive behavior. I am in no way saying that it's my parents' fault that I did the things I did. What I am saying is that when we have a lifetime of trauma and don't learn healthy ways to cope with those traumas, it is not a surprise that I set off on a path in life of trying to find things or other people to help define who I am, instead of doing as my mom said in her letter and remembering that only God has the power to define you. And for as long as you remain in Him, you are a princess daughter of the Most High King. The tarnished trinkets of popularity and painted on beauty cannot compare with the nobility of a righteous woman. By the time I graduated high school, I had 5 boyfriends in a year and several other guys that I had flirted with. My mom called me a whore, even though at that point I was still a virgin. If I had to pinpoint a specific point in my life where I stopped caring, it would probably be that point. I think for this reason, a lot of the things written in my parents' letters just felt hypocritical to me at the time, and I never paid any attention to them. I graduated high school when I was 17 years old and enrolled in community college here in Kalamazoo. Whoop, whoop. I was able to pay for my first semester of college with cash from scholarships I had received through 4-H. College is when I started to make really unhealthy choices. I didn't want to follow my family's rules for living at their house, so I moved in with a guy I had dated in high school. His parents took me in as if I was their own daughter. By this time, he had a different girlfriend, but we were still close friends. This still didn't change the awkwardness of living in his house with his new girlfriend around though. So I was always wanting to be away, which meant I was at parties almost every night to avoid the options I had for homes at that time. My need to find true love never went away. It just intensified. Any guy who gave me attention got my attention. I assumed everyone who wanted sex wanted a relationship. I was very wrong, but that didn't stop me from looking. When I started to realize that all I was good for was sex, I started to drink to numb the pain. This became a cycle I would continue for 3 years. Look for love, have sex, drink to numb the pain, repeat. When I was 20, I was in a back and forth relationship that resulted in me getting pregnant with my son. I found out I was pregnant in a Walmart bathroom, and my first thoughts were, 1, I don't know for sure who the dad is, and 2, I don't want to tell anyone. 3, if I get an abortion, nobody will have to know. It took me about 30 seconds to come up with those 3 thoughts. When I did decide I was going to keep the baby, miracle number 5, I remember thinking, I'm finally going to have the family I always wanted. It was my chance to provide for my child what I always wanted for myself. I wasn't going to repeat my parents' mistakes. You would think that getting pregnant would have changed my lifestyle, but my need for someone to love me didn't go away. I did stop drinking because I wanted to be healthy for my baby, but I didn't stop looking for the perfect relationship. His dad didn't believe he was the father for most of the pregnancy, rightfully so we were very on and off. At the same time, the other person who was the potential father wanted to be with me, but he was an alcoholic and very unhealthy to be around. I spent most of my pregnancy feeling alone, broken, unloved, and defeated. After my son was born, the paternity test proved that my boyfriend was the dad. I thought this would change things and that we'd finally be able to be a family. Again, I was wrong. I'd spend the next 3 years in and out of relationships, finding short-term love in random men, and ultimately feeling more and more unloved with every person I'd encounter. In 2017, I ended up marrying my first husband. We had had an on and off again relationship since 2012 and decided we might as well get married if we were going to keep getting back together every time anyways. This ended up being a marriage that only lasted 7 months before I decided to pack as much as I could in the middle of the day and leave while he was at work. The 7 months we were married was full of infidelity, spousal abuse, and an overall unhealthy relationship. I knew I couldn't stay in that relationship. In September of 2019, I married my second husband. He was the exact opposite of my first husband. He was an over-the-road truck driver, so he was barely around, and I liked that. I couldn't get hurt by someone I never saw. When he was home, we had a great relationship. Or did we? The truth is, we both had traumas that we hadn't dealt with. And we both had things in our lives that we had never worked through. The distance gave us a chance to hide what we were really dealing with behind the other person's back. Our marriage ended up being full of lies and secrets, and again, more infidelities. But we were both good at hiding it. We made it through 4 years of marriage, both hiding things from each other and both hurting in our own ways. Bring back the tears here for a second. So here's the timeline of that marriage, just to give you an idea of what we were dealing with. In September of 2019, we got married. In March 2020, COVID hits. I become a stay-at-home mom. He stops driving over the road and is home every single day. The way we had been our entire relationship changed. We were no longer able to hide our secrets as well, and things started to shift. 7 months later, October 2020, we buy our first house, the house my great-grandparents built. The same house I was in when I was sat down and told about my dad. The same house my son came home from the hospital to. The house that was filled with the highest highs of my life and the lowest lows. Little did I know the emotional impact that would have on me. 5 months later, March 2021, my grandpa died. Seven months after that, in October 2021, my dad died. The one who had raised me, the one who had said, he promised he would always be there for me. This is where I can say my life finally started to change. I was tired. I couldn't do it on my own. My second marriage was starting to show signs of falling apart. We didn't know how to be there for each other. We still hadn't dealt with the traumas of our lives before we met each other, let alone these new traumas that seemed to just keep stacking on. I needed a change. I had grown up in Christian schools, church my whole life. I knew what I needed, but I didn't know where to start. Everything I had learned as a kid, I thought was all just hypocritical church talk. Nobody I knew actually walked what they talked, so why would I want what they have? 5 months after my dad died in March 2022, my best friend's dad died, the one who let me stay at his house as a teenager. How much more was God going to take from me? How much more did I have to break? I started doing my own research, how to read the Bible, historical background of the Bible. I started to understand the context of Luke and Acts. I was starting to get it. At that point, I knew I had to repent. True repentance, the kind that is life-changing. Repent and be baptized. On April 15th, 2022, I got baptized. I felt alive. I felt loved. I was on fire for Jesus. I wanted everyone to feel how I felt. A few weeks later, my husband got baptized. All right, here we go. Things are gonna get better from here, right? Me and my husband are both going to church and we're both gonna start living our life for Christ, right? May 6th, 2022, 21 days after my baptism, my husband's dad dies in the middle of the night unexpectedly. How can this be happening to us? We both gave our lives to Christ. How can he be taking away everything we love? At that point, we didn't know how to be there for each other. We grew the furthest apart we'd ever been. By February 2023, we were barely functioning as a married couple anymore. Our marriage was over, we just hadn't admitted it yet. We tried counseling, we started going to Celebrate Recovery, but we just blamed each other and didn't fix anything or really address the real issues. In August 2023, he moved out, and by February 2024, we were divorced. Once again, I had failed at love. Was I ever going to feel unconditional love? I loved my son unconditionally, but when was someone going to love me unconditionally? Throughout 2024, I worked insane hours. I work elections, so that was a lot of fun in 2024. It's also fun this year, by the way. I worked insane hours. I went to church, went through the motions, dated a couple people who just showed I still can't trust anyone. Throughout that year, though, I started to really study my Bible more. I started to realize that what I always wanted, I already had. God was starting to break down the defense walls I had put up my entire life. I didn't need a man to show me unconditional love. God already had. I started to realize I needed to focus on that. I needed to stop focusing on what God wasn't giving me and focus on what he already had given me. When we started Celebrate Recovery at my church, back up again in February of 2025, I realized this was my chance to focus on the important things in my life. I had no idea how God would use my story to help other people, but throughout 2025, he had constantly showed up. My life didn't take the path my parents wanted it to go when they wrote those letters to me in 2010. But if it had, maybe I wouldn't be giving this testimony or sharing my story of how God has shown up in my life and to so many other people. Back to the letters again. In the letters from each of my parents, they all had the same message to me. My mom wrote, "Cherish relationships and be a bridge builder, not only for you and not only for your use and benefit, but as a lifeline for those who will see strength and wisdom in you, and whose only path to Christ may be a bridge you refuse to burn. This will be frustrating for you, but keep an eternal perspective in mind. People are shallow, self-centered, demanding, negligent, but we can't really expect anything different until they are truly united with Christ. Even then, emotional constipation seems to be taking over. Your loving, blunt speech can help people heal, but only if you keep watering down the bridges. I think of you and the impact you can have every day." Reading this was miracle number 6. As I read the words, a flood of good memories, chances I've had to share the gospel, and my blunt speech swept over me. I needed that letter for right now. My 17-year-old self couldn't understand what my 33-year-old self does now. Sorry, I can't see the page, so I can't continue. Once we get past my dad's letter, we'll be good. And my dad wrote, always remember to look at the positive side of things. Stay above the line. Remember to smile no matter how tough the times. Always tell the truth. It just does not work any better. Do not forget to say, oh well, every now and then. Protect your name and testimony for God and our namesake. Lastly, treat others as you would like to be treated. Miracle number 7. Little did he know when he wrote that in 2010 that he would be gone. And that I would be quoting his words of protecting my testimony as I share my testimony with others. My stepmom wrote, keep your determination and your goals. Don't give them up for anyone. Never settle for less than everything you want. Never. You are worthy of it all. Be proud of your accomplishments. You have earned them. This one sits a little differently for me. My stepmom and I no longer have a relationship. Unfortunately, the traumas that she caused me in my life continued into adulthood, and in order to protect myself, I had to take a break from that relationship. Even though that relationship isn't what I wish it was, it is still good to recognize the good that she has given me in my life and hold on to some of that hope for a healthy relationship in the future. I can't say for sure why those letters never had an impact in my life before this moment. I can't say for sure what made me decide to start organizing this room in my house that would ultimately lead to me finding these letters again. But what I can say is that for months, I couldn't finish my testimony. There was always something missing. I never felt that I was sharing my story the way God wanted me to. When I was asked to share my testimony at my church, I begrudgingly agreed and said I'd stop procrastinating and get it done. Was writing this testimony the night before I had to turn in my testimony for review for my CR. I found those letters just in time. God showed up just in time. He always does if we let him. We just have to be paying attention, listening, and waiting for the little moments. Over the last year, my mom and I have had many moments of tears and laughs. We have relived some of the traumas that took us down the roads we went on. It's not my place to share her story, only how some of her actions impacted my story. My mom and I, the mom I had until 2010, is not the mom I have today. She gave her life to Christ in 2010 and was baptized a new person. The old is washed away. Her sins are forgiven. The last quote from the letters is hers. No power of word or pen can capture my love for you. I can only pray that God will grant you the understanding you need to listen to my heart. It took me almost 16 years to let my heart be willing to listen to what God was sharing through my parents. Had I listened to 16 years ago, who knows where my life would have gone. But we can't live in the what-ifs of our past life. Instead, let's live in the what-ifs of God. What if I quiet my mind and start listening? What if I believe? What if I surrender? What if I choose him? What if I pay attention when he's speaking? To the newcomer, we all have different stories. We all have our own unique story that brought us here tonight. None of us share the same story, but what if you start listening to what God is saying? What if you pay attention to the God moments? What if you choose recovery as the pathway to peace, living one day at a time, accepting one moment at a time? What if this is the moment that changes the rest of your life? What if? I want to leave you with this verse, Acts 18, 9b through 10a. Do not be afraid any longer, but go on speaking, and do not be silent, for I am with you. I pray this prayer for all who hear this testimony. Have courage. Don't be afraid of the things you don't know. Don't be afraid of what might happen if you give up control. And go on speaking about the miracles you will begin to see if you're in your life if you let God take control. Thank you.